Well, welcome back, guys. Now, on the previous episode, we unboxed the EP800. Or should I say there were many unboxings because this comes in a lot of different boxes. And I tried to do a basic rundown of what to expect when you receive one and how heavy they are. And in this video, hopefully I'm going to try to explain how we're installing it, how we're utilizing it, the decisions we made. We get to see it working at the end of the video. Now, while their website does say that it's a very simple installation, this is all the instructions that it comes with. You can download the app right there, but when it comes to the wiring schematic on how to actually use it, it's in this flyer basically. That's it. That's the wiring schematic on really the installation of the entire unit. It's kind of lackluster and has left me scratching my head quite a bit. Maybe this is simple for a lot of people, but there's a lot of information condensed down into an 8 by 11 sheet of paper there. But now that being said, luckily I have quite a history of installing very similar units on an RV and cabins, and I have been working with an electrician, and I think we've come up with a solution. My electrician will be here very shortly, and it'll be a fun installation. I'll try to record as much as he will allow me to show. And my installation might be quite different than a lot of other people's installation on how they're going to use it. And I think I'm going to be using a lot of different supplies. So it's not going to be an inexpensive installation for me either. We'll be exclusively working on this wall right here to make the installation as simple as possible and the least amount of wire runs as possible. So I do have to clear out all this area for the electrician, which might be the only thing I'm really qualified to do today. All right, now let me just say, I did reach out to my utility company, and they did send me a very long email with all the regulations required that I sent to the electrician. As long as I followed those guidelines, I didn't require any permits or checks out from Salt River Project, my utility here in Phoenix area. And after repeated attempts to contact Sun Valley Solar, the installer of my on-grid solar system, went unanswered. It did force me to go with a different electrician who was happy to work with me. So that was a little disappointing. So if I just wanted to have emergency power backup, just like if I had a generator sitting right here running on my natural gas, all I would have to do is basically get a 50 amp breaker, a double breaker, run it from here up to there, and then from there it would go to the input on the Bluetti and then back out through backup to the breaker over here. So if I lost power, I would just go ahead and flip that the opposite way, cutting grid power to the Bluetti and then restoring power from the Bluetti to the bus bar down here, and it would backfeed to my house. In that situation, I would definitely want to turn the main breaker off right here to disconnect the house from the grid. And also I'd have to be very careful of what I'm actually operating inside. The Bluetti is intended for whole house use, but the 800 is for 8,000 watts. And if you notice, there's just a double 50 amp breaker like you'd find on a RV. So it's 240 at 50 amp. So the EP800 is very capable of doing 240. I wouldn't say 50 amp, probably 40 amp seems a little bit more honest. So if I were to turn on my central AC, which is 50 amp service 240, and even though I just replaced this about a year ago, it's grossly inefficient, and it would probably cause a fault in the EP800 because the surge amperage would be far in excess of 8,000 watts, even if I were to install a soft start on the AC. And while my other loads like my range or my dryer might be able to work, that would be grossly inefficient to use any of that off a battery backup. I pointed at my pool, and you tell me I have a pool that uses a lot of electricity. You can see I run this during the day when the sun's making power anyways. So unlike most people that run their pool at night when power's cheaper, I don't have to worry about that because it doesn't get cheaper than free. And while you might also notice that I have a level 2 electric car charger, I would still probably only use that during the day when the power is free, thereby maximizing the purpose of my electric car. Now, truth be told, I could still plug the electric car into a normal 15 or 20 amp outlet if I needed to in an emergency and run it off the Bluetti. And of course, in an emergency, if I needed to run the AC, I'd be better off just getting a backup mini split or a window unit just to put in a room and run that straight off a 15 amp outlet too. So strictly as an emergency power backup or as a generator, this would be sufficient. It would all be manual. I'd have to turn that off and this off, and then go through and turn off a lot of the circuit breakers and loads of things that I didn't necessarily need working at the time. But there's no fun in that. That's just a manual system, and the box would just sit there in the garage, just hoping and waiting for the city or the utility to turn off power so it could do anything. Now that's still a fantastic option for it because you don't have to do any maintenance. You don't have to keep fuel on hand. You'd have power right there. You don't have to worry about gas cans. But what I'm more interested in doing is using that free power that I'm making from my solar panel all day, and rather than feeding it back to the grid to my neighbors for very cheap power for the utility, I'd rather charge these batteries with my free solar power, and then during the night when I don't have the sun out, power selected circuits right here with that free saved power. So what I'll have to do is find the loads that I want to be powered by the battery backup, take them off of my main breaker box, reposition them onto a sub panel right there. So I have 12 spaces right here for 12 breakers. So I'm going to have 12 circuits that I will take the 12 most important ones to have as backup and power offset for me. Like the garbage disposal may not be that vital in emergencies or to save power. Whereas the lights and the general purpose 110 outlets inside the house could be very useful for me because I always use those. And most importantly, like a freezer or the all-important refrigerator. Even though I do this all the time on RVs, I am not a licensed electrician, so I can't take this panel off and start rewiring my house, even though I want to. Well, my electrician is here. This is Jason with Goldfield Mountain Electrical, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So you're okay being on film, right? Or camera?
Yes.
All right. I appreciate it. He's going to work with me. We've come up with a plan for installing this Bluetti EP800, right?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Jason. All right.
Come on.
Lights are off. Refrigerator's off. Microwave's off. No power there, so we definitely want those to work. Hi, Finn. That's not working. Those are dead. Ceiling fan is dead. All right, so that would be master bedroom, and the other bedroom should be the arc faults for the lights, hopefully. So those should be all the circuits I want to move. I've made a note on those. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Might have to take the microwave off. So Jason's going to start getting to work and doing this. Actually, pretty simple job for him. Thank you, Jason.
You betcha.
That's not a bad installation, huh? He's very excited. There's already a hole at the back of the breaker box right there. So we'll be able to put the sub panel right on the other side of the wall right here. All right, so Jason with the Goldfield Mountain, right? Nice clean installation we're going to go for, right, Jason?
You know that's right.
All right, thank you, Jason. So we can pull all the wires right here. He's calling it a gutter, right?
Right.
Basically a big junction box.
A junction box so we can make a good connection and install the panel correctly.
Right, at a code height. We have the 12 circuits pulled right here. What I'm curious about is see if the arc faults or the GFCIs have an issue with the inverted or the battery power too, because I've run into that quite a bit on RVs or lower grade inverters having issues. So I'd be interested to see how that holds up. All right, well, I got Jason over here doing all the wiring. Thank you. I'm going to be over here. I'll set up the unit where it's going to be going permanently, so that way when he runs the wires, he can do it easily. The important thing to remember about is the platform is what everything's built off of, and a garage floor is actually designed to slope downhill, and we want to make sure that it's not sloped. We do want to make sure that the platform is level and true and plumb from the get-go. And then I also want to find at least one stud in the wall. I definitely don't want over 500 pounds of lithium and iron just dangling in space or secured to drywall only. So I do want to have a stud for it to be mounted to. All right, I'll just take my straight edge to line up my 2 marks right there, bring it all the way down to where the first mount's going to be mounted. So I do like that it does have the adjustable feet on there with a locking nut on it too. I also like that this keeps it off the ground so that I could clean underneath if I need to. Something as simple as a vacuum cleaner or a blower, and I can blow out from underneath and keep critters from wanting to live there. It also keeps it up to about the foundation height, so if there was a flood, obviously the entire tower and battery pack isn't going to be in the water. Pretty good there. All right, I decided if anything I want it to be leaning back towards the wall a little bit, so I want the front a little bit higher. And now just using the hardware provided to me from Bluetti, I can install this. That's a pretty slick design, because it also is offset enough to give airflow on the back side here. I'll take the other side right here that has the slotted section on it. I'll just have to put the nut on. And now with that set up, I can just go ahead and push it back to my mark on the line. Just like that. And I'll just use a lag bolt and a washer to drive it home into the stud in the wall. Couldn't be easier. And I'll still secure this side using probably some toggle bolts on this side just for added support. Then I'll stack the next battery, the next battery, the next battery, then the EP800, and bolt it up the same way all the way up that stud. All right, got that side secured down pretty well. This is a pretty slick little system they put on there. I'm pretty impressed by it. Very easy to do. Man, perfect spacing behind there too. I can safely say I don't feel like this is gonna fall down and kill anybody now. If you had any critique about the whole thing, you said overall it was built pretty well.
Built well. The only thing I didn't like were the connectors on top of the unit. Other than
Right. So where it connects right at this point right there, that was actually pretty difficult. Even with some flexible braided line, it still would have been pretty difficult. That was, of all the things, it was just this connection right there. That was the most difficult. I think Bluetti could probably just put threaded lugs on there or a better connection. So I thought I had this all ready to go and test out, but unsurprisingly, I can't follow simple instructions. According to the instructions right here, I require a rapid shutdown mechanical switch, not unlike the one on my solar setup here. Not so much to protect the power company from backfeeding, because that can't happen with this setup. With the safety interlock breakers right there. But I guess it's mostly for safety for emergency personnel if they need to shut this thing down quickly. Or a service tech or electrician. Hey, look who just showed up. Now this is a little bit larger than probably required, but sometimes bigger is always better anyways. So this will have the manual connect and disconnect right there, and you can lock it out and tag it out if you need to. And luckily, it shouldn't be too much work, so it's just going to be where power goes into the Bluetti EP800 right there, which is coming from the box on the other side. So we'll just interrupt this whip right here, put the disconnect in, and then rewire power going to it. None of this has to change whatsoever right here. So that's the good news. It's a fairly easy job to do. I mean, fairly easy for Jason to do. It'd be very difficult for me. What do you think?
I think it's good.
Think it's good?
Everything will work just fine.
All right. We even got an interrupt on the neutral too, right?
You know that's right.
All right. Let's try the box you put in there. Thanks, Jason.
You bet. Thank you.
So we need those breakers in there anymore. Put some blanks on it, right?
Yeah. Keep the panel sealed.
And we'll just bond it right there to the earth ground for the entire house. Right? It's good access.
Absolutely.
Couldn't hurt. Well, unfortunately, we did have to add that disconnect, but that is done now. And let's get on with the installation of the Bluetti EP800. The next step is going to actually be to hook up the low voltage or the battery connections on this, and of course the control side of it. Of course, the boxes did come with all the cables and everything that we needed right in there. And I have already shown you the communication cable, the battery ground, the battery positive, and of course the chassis ground. One thing I do want to point out right here, if you look at the, it is copper strand. It's not that Alumacore or alloy in there. This is all real braided copper cabling, which is what you're going to want. It's in on the battery cables too. So that's a really nice upgrade. They didn't cheap out on the cables either. I got everything laid out right there. These two battery cables are a little bit different because these will be the last two we install. I'll show you how to do that. But I think this is where this kit is really going to excel because all the cables are already pre-made for you. Just go ahead and take the cap off of both sides here. And these are just slip-on rubber caps, nothing to them. It's color-coded, so red positive. I'm doing this in one hand. That's how simple it's going to be. Snap and snap. Pull on it. It's not going to come off, and they added enough slack right there that you'd like to see on a cable without causing too much slack. So look at that, ground to ground. Now it is important for me to point out that I do still have the batteries in the off position, which is the down position right there. All right, and just like that, all the batteries are hooked up. So you just have all these batteries, positive, 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 so they're all in parallel. My understanding is, even though we're not using the PV hookup right here, one of the nice features about this all-in-one unit that I didn't really know about was it's called DC coupling, which means the Bluetti EP800 is radically more efficient than my current setup right here. So my current setup, the solar panels come down to the inverter right there. The inverter inverts the DC voltage into AC voltage to power up the entire house. And now we're going to take that AC voltage to the Bluetti, and that's going to take the AC and convert it back to DC power. Whereas if you're just using the PV hookup on the Bluetti EP800, the built-in MPP charge controllers will take the DC voltage and go straight to the batteries with it. It does not have to convert it to AC, then back to DC again. So you don't lose a lot of a waste in electricity with that free power. All right, so the last thing I have to do is take off the protective covers right here for the two battery terminals. All right, so with those off, this will probably be the most dangerous part of the battery installation, because we are going to have to hook up the last two battery cables, and those are the exposed terminals. So we don't want to short those together whatsoever. So I don't know if it matters if you hook up positive first or negative first, but it's my tendency to always hook up positive first. We'll do positive first. It's still disconnected right here, so it's no power up here because there's no power to the EP800. And it's not hooked up to the battery down below. So it's tight. I'll do the same thing over here on the negative. All right, both covers are on now. We'll just go ahead and connect both battery cables to the batteries. Right now, with all the cables connected, we're going to resist the urge to turn the batteries on or turn the disconnect on because we don't have the communication hooked up yet. We need to do that first. So we're going to take our communication cables right here, and we already have a diagram here on page 50. We're going to go to link port 2 on the EP800 to the first battery, and then after that we'll go out to in, out to in, out to in, down the 4 chains. Again, this is going to be probably simple enough. I can do it one-handed. Just going to line up. There you go. You just push it on, and that locks it in place. If you twist it in the direction of the arrow right there, that's how you disconnect it. So you don't have to tighten it up like a military cannon plug. It just snaps in place. We'll run it through this right here, the handle. The handle becomes important because if you go on the outside of it, you won't be able to put the cover on. Look how simple that is. One-handed. So out of this one, snap into place, and look at that. The perfect amount of slack in the cables, nothing measuring. This is almost too easy. All right, let me just connect the last two batteries and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, so all the batteries are connected together. The last thing we have to do is put the communication cable dongle on to the link port 1. Now Bluetti is calling this the IoT controller. This is just going to be basically the Wi-Fi bridge to connect to the network in the house or the cabin. And while I imagine you probably could just use some Velcro to hold it in place, Bluetti does give you a mount that you can put on the wall. I would like to keep it out of the way of anything. It just slides into place right there. And with the built-in Velcro strap on the cable, you already have pretty good built-in cable management. Now I've already laid it out, and this little section right there, that cable will go through the cap just fine. For the end cover, you see the gap right there is perfect. So I did go ahead and install the dust caps for weatherproofing that Bluetti does ship with these two for the handles, if you were storing this outside. Now again, we're going to resist the urge to turn anything on yet because we haven't done the chassis ground on this side. Or I guess you would call them earth grounds on a house, not an RV. They're just going to go from one ground point to the next one. With the idea, these will give a path to earth or ground if there is a sort of electrical fault to provide safety for the user and for the house. Maybe not so much for the equipment, but yes, that is a 10 millimeter bolt head. And yes, I did have the electrician go ahead and run me a earth ground to the main house earth ground. That's accessible right there. Also where we already saw the earth ground for the PV system is. So really, the EP800 at this point is installed. I haven't turned it on. We still have the disconnect off, and I still have it in grid mode on this. We have one last thing to do, and that's to install all the covers that came on the end cap. Now they're pretty well designed because for the batteries, the B500s, they have a little notch on the side. It's going to go right around the wall mounts right there. And still gives you access to the breakers and the on-off button there. So that's where the last little hardware comes in. Bluetti provided all the screws to install the side covers too. All right, so all those are on this side. I do like to point out those MC4 connectors are protected by the cover now. So everything that's required accessibility is there. You get the breaker, the on-off switch here, and even the MC4 connectors. Everything else is safely secured and out of the way. All you have to do is the exact same thing on this side. And I was afraid that having this on first was going to cause problems, but Bluetti did design the cover with a notch on it, so it'll just go around everything pretty easily, and all the information is going to be on the side of it. It's not going to be hidden. You have to take this off. All right, well that's pretty much it. All the covers are installed. This thing is completely installed at this point. I do love the design of these caps because they did fit around all of the mounts easily. Unlike some of these backup battery systems out there, there's no coolant to leak or cause problems. It's all just going to be air cooled. But I am happy I won't have to worry about leaking coolant on this. Now if we go to page 62, we're going to power everything on because everything's hooked up at this point. So it says switch on, that right there. Switch on DC breakers on all the battery packs, so switch all of those on. Okay. And then it says, press and hold the power button on any of the B500s till the indicator lights light up and turn green. So I'm going to do the bottom one right here, and hopefully there we go. They all lit up. We have anything on display here? Not yet. A lot of clunking going on, but I have a green light over here. And then it says to power on the Bluetti via the app. All right, so I'm in the Bluetti app right here. I'm gonna go ahead and add a device. There you go, my device is right there. Need to log into my Wi-Fi, set that up. And then hopefully it should just have to update the system, and then we'll start taking a look at it. While it's doing its update, I still have the main 110 off there, and all right, so we're logged into the system now. Obviously, the batteries came with about 33% charge on them. All right, so I'm ready to turn the power on to my disconnect, and then we're time to provide some power That's going from the grid. And the other one's going to my sub panel right here. So I'll turn that on. All right, so if we go to the grid right there, it'll show me the power coming in, the frequency. I'm currently not using anything because I'm not have the output on. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, I haven't labeled my sub panel yet, but I do know that C is my garage. So I can leave that one on. I'm gonna turn all the other ones off. All right, everything else is on except for the garage. Now I need to switch this from being on the grid to the Bluetti. Okay, the lights are still on and the grid power is off now. So I am technically running, my lights, it's not a big win, but it is a win off of the EP800 right now. Let's see what the app has to say. All right, so it's even showing 0 watts for consumption, but if I go to consumption here, let's see what's going on. Current, we're using 1.4 amps to light the garage. That's not that very impressive. Now, yeah, the light is kind of impressive, but it's important to remember right now, we're not inverting. All we're doing is sending grid power into the inverter and right back out again. So the Bluetti EP800 is really not doing anything at this point. That's why it's showing 0 wattage as consumption. The inverter is off. It told me to power it on. What to do is go to the settings right here, and I need to do a system switch. Turn on the main switch, which is already on. So now the inverter is on. So if I go back, let me take a look at it. It says off-grid operation. So now I am consuming 133 watts of power from the batteries, but we're also charging the batteries too. And you guys missed it, but my lights did flicker because it did switch into the inverter mode now. So I am running off of the Bluetti for the garage lights, which is nice because that means my garage door opener is also on my emergency backup power too. So if the house does lose power, my garage door was still open. But that's not what I want to talk about. There's that wattage coming up. That's what I wanted to see on the grid. All right, so it's maxing out about 7,800 watts or 7.8 kilowatts. Now it is midday right now, but the sun hid behind the cloud a little bit, so let's see. My power production is only about 3,000 watts currently, so at 7,800 watts, the solar is not really making up but a third of the power that's being charged on those batteries right there. Now the batteries are charging. The fan is running. It's pretty quiet. I can't hear anything really. It's just a little bit of a light air. I assume in the summers it'll be a lot louder. Even my inverter over here is pretty loud when the fan really kicks into high during the summer. But if I come inside right now, right, my refrigerator is off. None of my light switches are working. Hi, fan. But you can see my pool is operating because it does not go through the Bluetti. However, my hot tub is dead because it goes through 110 power through that junction box right there. So the next step is for me to turn the rest of those breakers on. Before I do that, you can see that we're still only using about 150 watts for the garage lights. So now if I go ahead and start turning everything, we'll see if we start increasing the consumption. There it starts coming up. All right, so we're getting up to 700 watts in power is what we're using. That's not too surprising because the refrigerator is about the biggest load that's going to be on there. All my lights are LED lights. I guess I could turn all my lights on. Those lights are back on. Hallway's back on. Laundry room's back on. My router is back on. So now I've turned all the lights and loads on that are basically going to be on the backup system. That means all these lights, the refrigerator, and the outlets would all work if the city lost power. Now, while it may not be important to have a hot tub that works in an emergency, That does mean I have power at my 110 outlets. Now, as we look at the app again, we can see we're still pulling 7.9 kilowatts from the grid, and now we're using 1.2 kilowatts from the batteries. We're already up to 42% on the batteries. However, once the batteries are fully charged, that grid use will go down substantially. And I know it doesn't show anything on production because I'm not using the solar capabilities of Bluetti EP800. But once we do stop charging the batteries, we're going to lose probably about 7,000 watts of power use. And once the hot tub kicks back out again, we'll probably be back down to 700 watts total during the day. And while obviously my level 2 car charger wouldn't work because that's not going through this system, I could still use the level 1 car charger that came with the car. It will take a little bit longer to charge the battery, but that also means in an emergency situation, I'm technically making my own fuel. I wouldn't have to carry cans of gasoline with me. However, the Bluetti EP800 is capable of actually doing level 2 car charging. I just didn't think it was important to have that capability for my house to sacrifice 2 circuits when I was hardly ever going to use that for that purpose. I haven't set this up yet. We're still in the wrong mode. Because don't forget, there's 4 working modes on this system right here. The backup mode, where basically the batteries are just waiting for power to be lost and then it would automatically turn on. But I don't want that. I want to do a scheduled charge and discharge, so the batteries get charged during the day when I'm making free power. And then I can use it at night, and once the batteries, if I deplete them, go dead, it then would switch to grid power. And of course, as the Bluetti is completely charged, that PV system that I did not touch whatsoever will just feed all the excess power again straight back to the grid, and I'll get credited to that too. From my local utility, which in this case is SRP. Hey, look at that, we're already up to 4,300 watts. We're coming up. Almost no clouds again. I still have a lot more setups to do in here. I'll still have to go through the settings on the app and make sure I have it set up to maximize the solar during the day and maximize the battery at night so I can offset my power use even more. I do want to leave everybody with a little bit of a reality check. The EP800, just like most home battery backup solutions, no matter what you might see, most of them are not a whole house battery backup system. Most of them, if you want a whole house on a 200 amp 240 system, you're going to need to probably have 3 systems by themselves because 8,000 watts. Because 8,000 watts is only a sixth of the 48,000 watts of power available on a normal 200 amp service at a house. Most houses, even in the middle of summer, still aren't using 24,000 watts of power unless you're turning on the range, your water heater, turning the ACs on, the dryer on, and all the lights and everything. So almost nobody's doing that all at one time. So the 8,000 watts are pretty good middle of the road functionality for me. All this is really going to be operating is going to be my lights, my TVs, and my refrigerator. And I don't think I'll ever deplete these batteries when I'm using them. So I'm looking forward to getting you guys this information. And this has been quite the fun setup. And if I can be completely honest, I really don't trust any of these electronic switching inverters to handle the induction load of these central ACs, especially in Arizona, for repeated use over and over and over again, even with the soft start. I think it would burn out the inverter pretty quickly. So I wouldn't want to put the AC or the pool pump, big loads like that, like the dryer or range or even water heater on the inverter, drawing peak power constantly on a system like this. Really, it is quite easy to do unless you do have to move 12 circuits. You'll have to get an electrician for that. Otherwise, if you're doing an off-grid cabin setup or even RV setup, I don't think you need an electrician. It is pretty simple. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Bye. You're welcome to curse if you need to.
I had this electrical room that was existing, and there was like 25 or 26 panels in this room, and we had to cut every wire and label every stinking wire. And I'm almost done here.
Nice.
I'm not sponsored by Corn.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot too much right now, Jason, because I know it's late in the day. But But now you've installed battery backups on industrial levels too, right? So
That's
even at the Apple,
At Tilden,
right?
Intel, Nestle, you name it.
Like great big huge industrial battery backups, right?
That's correct.
So with the exception of that connection point right there, everything else seemed extremely
Seemed good. Seems
right.
high quality, good build, good design, goes together good so far. So
all right. That's high praise. Thank you very much.
thank you.